Hello, and welcome to the Intuitive Rising podcast. I am so glad you're here. I'm your host, Amy Brooks, and up until about 5 years ago, I was just your average mom of 3. It was after the sudden loss of my father that my life changed forever, and the rising within me began. In this podcast, we will talk all things spiritual and healing through a very grounded and relatable approach. I hope you'll join me, remembering who you always were as we rise together. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Intuitive Rising podcast. I'm your host, Amy Brooks, and we have a very special episode today. We are being joined by the lovely Kate Flick. Hello, Kate. Welcome.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
You're so welcome. This has been a long time coming, I feel. It's interesting because I feel like this episode together is a long time coming, but also the fact that we both have launched our own solo podcast is a long time coming as well. Funny enough, Kate and I met. I don't know if we met in the podcasting course, but that was the beginning of the connection, I think, like around the time we kind of got to know each other. We took a podcasting course, like a virtual one, and we were in there together. So when I say it's been a long time coming, that was years ago.
Yeah, that was a long time. That was like before the pandemic, I think. Right?
Or around the beginning of it.
The beginning of during the pandemic, like 2020, yeah. I think.
Yeah. So it's been a long time coming in more ways than one. So Kate, why don't you introduce yourself to my community here? I bet we have a lot of similar people in our followings. I feel like we have similar people following and listening. So some of you might know both of us, but for those of you that do not know Kate, why don't you go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, thank you. Again, thank you for inviting me. I'm super excited to connect with you in this way. My name is Kate Flick. I don't know what's coming down is I'm a semi-retired high school teacher. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know exactly how I stand right now with my teaching, but I've been a teacher for 20 years, a high school teacher for 20 years, which is crazy to say out loud. And I'm on a little hiatus. I love teaching, but I'm focusing on my spiritual business right now. And I am a Karuna Reiki Master Teacher. I'm an ICRT Animal Reiki Master as well, so that's kind of something new that I got certified in this fall, which I've really enjoyed. I'm also an Akashic Records reader and a Meditation and Breathwork teacher, so lots of healing. I'm very into the healing modalities. That's what my interest is. Yeah.
So perfect podcast name, because your podcast name is Heal Here.
Heal Here, yes.
Yeah, that's perfect. Did that just kind of come to you intuitively?
Yeah, I was struggling with deciding what to name it and the direction I really wanted to go. And I feel like I know you're supposed to niche down with everything, but for me, I do have a lot of interests, and I just kind of felt like everything seems to fall under the umbrella of healing. Mm-hmm. And for me, medium, when you come on my podcast, I'm so excited to have you and talk about mediumship, because that is such a healing gift and healing modality. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just everything that I'm interested in is kind of under that umbrella of healing.
Yeah. I struggled a little bit too. There's a few different names I had kind of in my back pocket. It was one of the reasons actually that I struggled launching it. I see now that I was kind of holding myself back for just such a little tiny reason.
Same.
But I struggled too. And then I decided, you know what, I'm just going to keep everything the same. The intuitive rising everywhere. Because my biggest message is about remembering and rising and remembering are the same thing to me. Kind of remembering your innate soul gifts and what you're all about. And I think that goes hand in hand with healing. I love that. I also just realized today is International Women's Day, the day that we're recording. So that's perfect. As we have, we're both women here, identify as women, and we are both, I feel like we're both small business owners. We're both taking some big, brave moves in our life as of lately, making big, soul-aligned choices. And, I think that's I think that's beautiful and wonderful. So happy International Women's Day to you. Listeners.
Same
this
to
will
you.
not be airing on International Women's Day, but it is today. So I felt like I wanted to mention it. So let's get into the Reiki piece. So Reiki is how I feel like that's not the way that we met, but it's the way that we connected in a more deeper level. So why don't you start off and mention to explain to some of our listeners what is Reiki? Let's start with what is Reiki.
Okay, so it's interesting. Like, that's a big question, I feel
yes,
like.
It is.
And I'll try to keep it simple, because to me, Reiki is just, I don't know, it's changed my life. And it's just, there's just so many kind of dimensions of Reiki. But when you get down to it, the word Reiki, a lot of people think Reiki is the healing modality, but Reiki is actually the energy itself. So when we're talking about Reiki, we're actually talking about the energy. And it is, when we're talking about using Reiki or being a conduit for the energy, it is a healing modality, a Japanese healing modality. But when you come back to the word Reiki, Rei meaning spiritual wisdom and Ki meaning life force energy.
Right.
And so what Reiki is a spiritually guided life force energy. And Ki, the word Ki is symbolic of life force energy. In a lot of cultures, there are words for life force energy like Ki, Chi, Prana. And it's interesting because in our Western culture, we don't have a word that kind of encompasses that life force energy, which I feel like is really telling, because we haven't seen the importance or realized the importance of this life force energy and how it can positively affect our lives and our health, our mental and physical well-being. So the Reiki is the energy itself. The healing modality, as I said, is a Japanese healing modality for stress and stress relief and relaxation. Just in the simplest terms, that's what I like to say, but it is so much more than that. And I know you've had experiences with, it's almost, you have to, experience the energy to understand it.
It's funny we're talking about like trying to put things into words too, because I just had somebody message me today and they were like, I was just looking at your website. I wanted to let you know that you helped me, like the way you were describing some of your offerings helped me kind of determine how to word what my offerings are, because it's so hard to verbalize what it is that this is, right? Whether it's like Reiki energy, whether it is tapping into mediumship or what have you, it's so hard to put into words. Like, what is this and what can it do for you? It's just something to be experienced, right?
Yeah. I always say if you can just experience it, then you can better understand. Like, the words never seem to do it justice. Like, it's just has to be experienced. And I think like that's where I remember really connecting with you, is you coming to whenever I would hold those Reiki experiences, and you did them, and it was so cool. Afterwards, you would get all these visuals and these messages that would be very similar to the messages that were coming through for me. And it was so cool to have that connection.
Yeah. Well, those connections actually blew my mind. I remember one I did with you, and we both saw one of those, like, what are they called? Like from the 80s, from our childhood. I think Kane and I are the same age. One of those.
What are those? Those spinny things. Death traps.
As kids. So if you're listening and you are, in your early 40s, maybe, grew up in the 80s, you may remember one of those metal spinning wheels, and somebody would stand on the edge and like run around and then jump on, and the rest of us would like sit or lay on it. We both saw that come through in a session, and it was insane that same thing came through.
Yeah, and it was, I forget what the deeper meaning was about. Yeah. Was it around feeling out of control with the energy? I can't even remember what the meaning was.
Like spinning out of control, or like feeling ungrounded in a sense. Yeah. It's
just kind of, unbelievable that we were having similar images come to us during the Reiki experience. And that's how I love the Reiki energy, because like even in these group experiences that I host, or in the trainings, the energy comes down, it's spiritually guided. It works with every person on an individual level, but then it also facilitates like this unity that people end up having these similar experiences and connections. And it's like, it works with us individually, but also connects us. I don't know. Yeah. It's just really cool.
It really is cool. Yeah. Yeah. Cause I remember a few other people, like there was other things that came through that we both had experienced that other people were like, yeah, I saw that too. Yeah. I think that's really, really cool. So what are the benefits? You as somebody, you're a Reiki master, right? So that means once you've reached that level that you can attune other people with that energy. I guess maybe that's a good thing. What does that mean? Like to be attuned to it. So it's not like anybody could just practice Reiki. You have to be attuned to the energy. And then I guess to follow up, like what have you found in your life as benefits of like receiving Reiki and giving it? And maybe I can speak to my experience a little bit too.
Yeah, no, I would love to hear your experience too. So to the attunement, exactly what you said, like there are so many frequencies of life force energy. Okay. There are just so many frequencies. Reiki and the Reiki that I teach and that I'm attuned to is holy fire Reiki. So there are different types of Reiki and lineages. Yeah. And a lot of people are familiar with the traditional Usui Reiki. The holy fire Reiki uses the Japanese techniques that are taught in Usui Reiki, but then the energy for, the courses that I teach for the Reiki that I'm attuned to is this holy fire. And it's a very high frequency, refined, conscious energy, which is, it amazes me all the time. It literally blows my mind that just how intelligent this energy is and how it works with people and gives you exactly what you need on kind of your healing path and journey. But exactly what you said, you need to be attuned to it. Okay. So you can be a conduit for the energy. And a lot of people think like, do I have to have a special gifts or intuitive, do I have to be super spiritual or intuitive to, be attuned to Reiki and practice Reiki? 100% no. Okay. This is something that's available to all of us through the attunement. We are simply the conduit for this energy and through that attunement, okay, we actually receive an energetic upgrade and we become attuned to the frequency so we can be a conduit for the frequency. And I should say that the traditional, I oftentimes use the word attunement, and that's what they use in Usui Reiki. In the holy fire, we call it a placement. It's the same thing. It's just because in holy fire Reiki, this attunement is done differently and it takes the master teacher out of the equation so that, for instance, I can't lower the vibration of this attunement that's happening. And so it's called a placement because almost like the energy is being placed in you. Yeah. So, but it's the same idea. When you hear attunement, and placement is synonymous with attunement. It's just more that placement is something that is a terminology used in holy fire. And so, wait, I'm trying to remember what your other question was.
It was, what have you noticed, like benefits of giving and receiving Reiki, whether it's like in your own life or just like if you want to share what you've seen in other people's lives that you've placed.
There's so many.
There's so many.
There are so many things. Like physical and emotional benefits. Like, for instance, what's just popping into my mind right now is I'm a junior high basketball coach, and I actually use Reiki with my basketball players, and which maybe seems a bit, I don't know if the word's unconventional, but it kind of, you wouldn't expect that maybe, but and I'll always ask their consent, but there's always like injuries happening. Yeah. And if somebody's rolling an ankle, you will see me on the side saying, is it okay if I give you Reiki? They know I'm going to ask. And I'm channeling Reiki to the injury whenever it happens. And that can definitely help speed recovery and, really facilitate healing of an injury. But one particular story is coming to mind. A couple of years ago, I had a basketball player who was in practice, and she just came off the court like crying, and she's like such a tough player. Like she just would play through anything, run into the type of player that would run into a wall. She just has this she's so aggressive, crazy work ethic. And I was just like, I was surprised to see her just removing herself from the play. And she said, I have a migraine. I get migraines. And she was just crying. And I said, okay, can I give you Reiki? And she was just like, yes, like she didn't know what she was agreeing to, but you know, she's desperate too. And I put my hands on her head and I just started to channel Reiki to her. And within 5 minutes, the pain, like she stopped crying. The pain literally fully disappeared. And this is stuff like, again, I'm a skeptic. I honestly I was skeptical of a lot of things. I'm not, you know, I am a skeptic around some of these things. I wasn't always somebody who believed in everything. Okay. I didn't believe in a lot of things, to be honest, before kind of spiritually awakening. So to see this like happen and her to be able to go back on the court and play, like it was just crazy to me to see something physical like that. But like other things, it's really wonderful for insomnia. Like she struggled with her sleep a lot, and I would send her Reiki distantly most nights. And if I, for some reason, missed a night, I would talk to her the next day and her sleep was she would know. And I mean, there's just so many uses for it, but it's so amazing for anxiety. Like that's what it helped me with first, is I was struggling a lot with anxiety. But yeah, and like there's just so many, there's so many benefits. Yeah.
Well, if you think if you're a conduit for the energy, and you mentioned the word energetic upgrade, then it's like it's working, it's doing something on its own, like without you. But then, you know, if you intentionally use it, because I talk a lot about intentionality in my work. I think when it comes to energy, intention is everything. So, you know, if it's already using you as a conduit and then you're intentionally working with it, I just would imagine it would be that much more healing.
Yes.
But to see it energy. Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, no, keep going.
I was going to say, to see it, you know, do something, especially through the skeptical lens. I actually love that you bring that up, because I've shared on this podcast as well that I am a natural skeptic. So although I've looking back, I can see I've been a medium since I was a child, right? And always experienced spirit. I've always known I had psychic senses. There was still this part of me that was like trying to disprove everything. And in fact, it plays a role in why I call myself an evidential medium, because I want to show the proof, the evidence of it.
Right.
And I do that because of that natural skepticism that runs within me. I think that skepticism can be healthy, so long as there's some, you know, curiosity is different than closed off. So I think there needs to be a level of curiosity. I see that in my work a lot. But I wonder if it's different with Reiki. Like, have you ever had somebody book a session with you, or even if like you've just encountered somebody and you've given them Reiki where they were super like, this is BS? I would imagine they wouldn't book a session with you, right? Like, it's just funny because I've had a client actually book a session with me. This was once at the very beginning, and I know that spirit was testing me, that did not believe at all and was trying to disprove me the whole time. And it was like, it was interesting to say the least, but like, there was a level of like the things were coming through that were truthful. Like, he had a spouse in the background that was like, that's true, like that's totally true. He's like, you know, like just totally closed off from it. I could still bring forward the information, but it certainly didn't feel as good on my end. But I think it might be different with you. Like, I don't know. I can't imagine somebody booking a Reiki session and being like, this is BS. I just want to prove it's all BS. Yeah, but I'm curious about skepticism.
Yeah, I wondered, and that's something I wanted to chat with you about, because wonder about that, like with mediumship. But I don't know, I sat in the very beginning, just because I've been in a lot of like mentorship programs with a lot of mediums. I've worked with a lot of different, just in spiritual groups, work with mediums, and we've talked about setting boundaries with spirit, and I've talked to them. I've heard their stories around skeptics, and I made the decision, I don't want to work with anybody who's a skeptic. Just personally, some people, I guess, that's a challenge. They love that challenge to work with skeptics. personally, I'm like, I don't need that challenge. I'm good. I don't want to prove. I don't need to prove. I spend my life trying to prove myself in this arena, in this little container. I don't want to have to prove myself. So I set a boundary with spirit when I started this work, that I only want to work with people that are ready to heal, that are open to this guidance and information, and that are open to the modality. I don't want to have to persuade or convince. And you know, I haven't had, to my knowledge, I haven't had any type of experience with a skeptic or any resistance in that way.
I'm smiling because I don't know if you know, but I have the same boundary, and I set it actually soon after that experience. So that was at the very beginning when like I first started offering readings, and they were like $25. You know, like this is the beginning of my journey. Right. And after that, I said, Spirit, this is the intention I'm setting. I don't want to have to prove so the evidence piece is not really about proving for me. I don't know. I don't know what the right word is. I don't want to prove to the other person that it's real. I just want to keep them open to the experience.
Oh no, I totally get that part. Yeah. I totally, in my readings too, because I have guidance that channels through, I want to have evidence, like I want mine. You want to connect with your, you know, I want to have proof to show, I don't know, my clients that, this is real. I want them to connect.
Yes.
Which will allow them to better connect with the healing messages and the guidance that comes through. So I do totally believe in the whole evidential piece. Like I believe that that's important for sure.
It sounds as if we're both on the same wavelength in that way. And the intention is different. The intention is different with, I believe in myself. I trust in this energy. I trust in the spirit world, and I want to build this connection to help this person heal, versus I want to prove myself because it like through the lens of ego, right? Like it's totally different. And I think that's kind of where we're the same about that. But I set a boundary with the spirit world as well, that like I want to work with soul aligned clients. So that's like the first and only time anything like that happened. And I always trust that, you know, this universe will take care of me. If you put out good intention and if you work from a good place, you know, good heart, I think that there'll never be any lack when it comes to clients and things like that. Do you notice it that now that you're like, you've dedicated yourself to your work, in the sense that you've made the decision like, okay, I'm going to take some time off from teaching high school. I'm all in with this. I'm sure like there's been moments like where you get worried or anxiety. Like I know I do, right? Because there's this lack mentality. Like, oh my God, if I don't have a steady paycheck, like what am I going to do? Right. And having to work through that, that's a big thing as an entrepreneur. But do you find like now that you're like all in, like it just, people just find you like organically. It just happens. Right?
I totally find that. And then I find that I've had periods of time where people haven't booked, and it triggers that scarcity mindset for sure. And you're like, why are people not booking? What's happening? And then I've come to realize when I look back is that I was that week or 2 weeks where there's nothing happening. It was because I need, like, other things were happening in my life that needed my full attention, that I needed to rest. And I didn't realize that I actually energetically needed to rest. Like things were happening in my personal life. So I see that spirit is looking out for me. And so now I've come to realize that in the beginning I was stressing, and now I'm like, okay, if things are slowing down, it's for a reason. And like, even, you know, when I was launching my podcast, things were slowing down a bit. And I was like, why are things slowing down? I'm like, okay, it's because if it was so busy, I wouldn't be able to launch this podcast. So I totally think that spirit does have my back, and I am trusting that it's all unfolding as it should. And, but I do find that people, it's so interesting how random people find you. They're like, I don't even know how I found your Instagram page, but I did. And I just knew I had to book a reading or in a session. And it's just so cool how that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed the same thing, and I'll notice periods where it's slowing down too, and I've also made the same connection, like, oh, okay, like you get in that kind of doubt mindset, and then afterwards you realize why it happened. It was a purposeful pause. But, and I think now when there's a purposeful pause, I'm able to take myself out of the reaction of like, oh God, right? Like, no, what's wrong? What did I do wrong? And it's just like, okay, this is a purposeful pause. And it's so freeing to know that. Like January was like 2 months ago was my busiest month in business, like in the last 4 years. It was very, very busy, but and I loved it for certain ways, obviously, right? Because I was like, oh, I'm getting somewhere. I'm like, finally, feel like I'm getting my name out there and I have steady business and this is great. But then I found towards the end, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so drained. I can't keep this up. So February was like the first 2 weeks was very slow. And I found myself get into my headspace again, like, oh, what's wrong?
Right.
And then
as soon as
it creeps in, right? And then as soon as I like switch the mindset again, this is a purposeful pause, moving through resistance of like resting or like, focusing my energy on other things like this podcast. And then all of a sudden things pick up again. So yeah, I've learned to trust, spirit's got your back. And I think I want other people to feel that. I think that's part of the reason I do this work is to feel that, like how sweet the surrender is, right? With like just going, and trusting that it's all going to work out. I think we need that more than ever.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. I love the purposeful pause. I like that. Yeah, I'm going to use
that. That's what I call. Yeah, use it. That's what I call it. It's a purposeful. I go, this is a purposeful pause. It's okay, And I've been saying it to my husband a little bit too, because he is now, after 24 years being in the military, that's certainly a certain kind of role and a certain kind of job, is now an entrepreneur as well. So now we're both entrepreneurs, and if things were getting slow, or is feeling like it was taking a long time to pick up speed, I'm like, this is a purposeful pause. We have to like, it's cool. Like you're building your portfolio, you're building connections. Like it's not going to happen overnight, but yeah, it's certainly a shift, like moving into the entrepreneur world from the regular steady paycheck from something else, right? It's huge.
It is.
Yeah. And there's so much that goes into, it is scary. It's certainly, yeah. And there's so much that goes into being an entrepreneur that people don't know about. Right? It's like, we're not just working when you see us on the screen. I know. Like we are working all the time.
I know. I was like saying that to my husband. I'm like, okay, I didn't make any money today, but I worked all day long.
I worked a full 8 hours. Yeah.
And I really love what I'm doing. So sometimes it doesn't even feel like work most of the time, but you're creating content on Instagram, as you know, like you're doing the same thing, and replying to DMs of like clients or potential clients, and answering emails, and then you're always creating something. Yep. Yeah. Anyway, it's just, and I love it. But sometimes I was like, okay, I didn't make any money today, but I worked really hard. But it's just different than, it's a total mindset shift from that steady paycheck to entrepreneurial life. It's a definite, it's an adjustment for sure. And it's definitely triggering to scarcity mindset, which, and beliefs around money, which I have had issues with. So it's been challenging, but there's been a lot of growth there too. So that's good.
Yeah. I feel like I never would have imagined myself an entrepreneur ever. Like it wasn't like that was ever my dream. Now that I am an entrepreneur and I have been for 4 years, looking back, I'm like, I was never meant for a 9-to-5, and I can see that. But it certainly was like never something that I thought I could do, because like just personally sharing, like I've shared on this podcast before that I have a diagnosis with ADHD, right? So my brain is like all over the place. I have trouble with routine. I have trouble with time management. I'm like, I could never run my own business, but I'm doing okay. Proving to myself that I can.
I feel like a lot of people with ADHD, and like, hello, me too. They have like, I think you would, just what you said, you would think, oh, it must be hard for, neurodivergent brains to run a business. But I feel like that we're actually really suited for it too, because I feel like there's a lot of ADHD, like neurodivergent people who are entrepreneurs too. And
I think I agree. And I think the only struggle is us trying to, like, working through the conditioning and the belief system that society, like how business or how work works, doesn't necessarily always suit itself or fit well with a person that's neurodivergent sometimes. Not all the time. Don't want to generalize, but for me, it did not. So I think in a way it's just like, yes, this works better for us, personally speaking, but all of the like framework of like how work is supposed to be doesn't work, but like who says that's how it's supposed to be anyways? Like maybe we're here creating a new way of work. Because I somebody told me once, oh, you have ADHD, oh, your attention is dialed into a higher dimension, and I'm like, yes.
Oh, I'll take that. I claim that.
That is what it is. I'm like, yes,
I like that.
And I believe it. You know, it reminds me of like, you know, like Dolores Cannon, and I think it was Dolores Cannon that did a lot of talk about indigo children. Because I remember growing up and I'm like, I am totally an indigo child. I can totally see that.
Sorry. This is weird.
Okay.
I lost you on my screen.
Oh no.
I don't know where you are now. No, a phone call just came through on this. Wait, just 1 second. Sorry.
I hate when that happens. And then it like goes off and you're like, where is it? I can still hear you.
I'm a newer Mac owner, and then it just interrupted my whole screen, this call, and I was like, what am I doing? I don't really know what I'm doing. So anyway, you're back.
That's okay.
I can see you.
I'm back? Okay. Yeah. So what we kind of talked a little bit about your natural skepticism and potentially like viewing this work and different types of energy healing through a lens of skepticism. So what role, if any, has spirituality or energy healing played in your life before your spirit, if we can call it a spiritual awakening? Like, and what did that look like for you?
Okay. Well, going back to my childhood, I was raised in a very religious household. My dad is I live in Prince Edward Island, Canada, smallest province in Canada. And Amy's moving back to the east coast of Canada, which is amazing.
Yes.
And which is interesting. Another commonality we have is that I lived where you live now in Kingston for a summer. Did I ever tell you that? I think I did.
Yeah, you did, because you said you used to work at the Cataract Way Mall.
The cat center.
The cat center.
So my dad grew up in Boston. He went to Catholic school. He was taught by nuns. Religion was a part of his curriculum, and every Friday they were going and doing the Stations of the Cross, and just very, very religious. And so that I was raised in that Catholic household. My mom was Protestant, and my mom, it's interesting, very spiritual, but not very attached to Catholicism or Protestantism. I don't even know how I'm saying that, to the Protestant faith. But she was always very spiritual and into spiritual things, spirituality, spiritual type of, I don't know, different modalities. She was chronically ill most of my life, so she was into EFT tapping and just like a lot of different, she was very open-minded with kind of that world.
He's somebody that would like see a sign and know it was a sign, you know?
Yes. Yeah. She was, and just she was very open-minded, but also like would go to a Bible study with nuns at the church, and like she could go with any type of open to a lot of things, I guess. But I was baptized and raised kind of quite strictly in the Catholic religion, and I felt a very, I remember reading, like, I don't know why this is coming to me now, I totally forgot about it. For a period of time, like, I became almost quite religious. I was reading this Daily Bread my mom had. It was called the Daily Bread, and it was almost like these devotionals, this little book that my mom had delivered to her. And I remember praying a lot. But then it reached a point, I don't know how old I was, I became very disillusioned with the Catholic Church, and realizing that my personal beliefs didn't coincide with a lot of the teachings of the church. And so then I literally just like pushed it aside and didn't believe in anything, like zero faith in anything. Felt like I was living this life fighting the good fight by myself, and had no support. And, I know that always concerned my mom. If you don't have faith, like, what do you have? And I'm like, faith in what? Like, I just didn't believe in anything. And I didn't really talk about religion too much with my parents at that point, but I didn't believe in God or anything like that. And the word God triggered me, to be honest. And then my personal story, and I won't go into all the details, but I have a whole podcast episode about my story on my podcast, if anybody's interested to hear it. But in a nutshell, I was teaching, had young children. I was staying up late every night. I was like experiencing extreme amounts of anxiety and so disconnected from myself and everything that I don't even think I realized how anxious I was, and how just, I don't know, I was going in such a bad direction. And then I hit a rock bottom when I was diagnosed with cancer, and it was melanoma. And, you know, a friend from university had just passed away from, actually, that is a key part of the story I should tell today, is that she had melanoma. Hers it was metastatic melanoma. Yeah. Mine was stage 2. Hers was metastatic, so it means it got into her lymph nodes and spread. Yeah. And sadly, she passed away and left, you know, her son and her husband. Her son was 2 at the time. And it was a really sad and devastating story. And I remember being at her funeral, and this is somebody who I was an acquaintance with. She wasn't like my close friend, but, you know, I was at her funeral. She was an acquaintance. She was a beautiful person. And during the funeral, I felt, it was the most bizarre thing. Like I just got this sign and it was just like, call the doctor. You need to call. There's this mole on your leg. You need to have it checked. And I don't know. It was like this divine intervention. And I called my doctor. It took a year to get it taken off because 2 doctors didn't look like melanoma, to 2 different doctors. And the first doctor sent me to the specialist because he knew I'd lost a friend and that I was anxious about it and just wanted to, you know, quell my anxiety, I guess. And then both doctors were so shocked that it was melanoma. So I was diagnosed with melanoma as well. But I felt like I felt like it was her watching over me, and I felt like I got this divine sign from her. Yeah. And it's so interesting. And when she passed, I felt this deep connection to her that even we had been acquaintances, but it was like I felt so close to her after she passed away, like so much closer than when she was living.
Right. Like from spirit. It's funny because I had an acquaintance as well. Like I went to high school, but she was a year older than me. And funny enough, once we became friends on Facebook, like back when Facebook first came out, I'm aging myself, but like in 26, I've been on Facebook since 2006. I remember we followed each other and she had this picture of her daughter outside. And I said, oh my God, I think they live in the house I grew up in, just like based on what it looked like outside. So I messaged her and I said, do you live at blah, 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 blah? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the house I grew up in. Her brother bought the house for my parents. Anyways, the reason I'm telling this story is that we just kind of knew of each other in high school. We're Facebook friends, had this connection that she lived in my childhood home. She was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. I feel like in I hope I don't get the date wrong, 2015-ish, I don't know, around that time. She had 3 kids. Her youngest was little, like maybe 2, like your friend. And the day that she passed away, I had kind of like an intuitive hit that she was gone. And this would have been the end of 2017. So I've shared a lot on this podcast that that's really when things were starting to happen for me. Like I kind of credit my dad's passing in January 2018 as the very thing like that blew the lid off of it. But things were happening certainly in 2017, and she passed. And I remember finding out the next day, like confirming that she had passed because somebody posted it on Facebook. And I sat on my kitchen floor and I cried. Like I just cried as if somebody like very, very close to me passed. And I'm like, I didn't want to like judge my grief, but at the same time, I'm like, why am I grieving like this? I didn't know her very well. But I have felt her energy so many times over the last couple of years. So I don't know. Like, I don't know if she just comes, like, it might be, I don't know, a similar thing. I don't know, but the health thing, knock on wood, I don't have any signs of anything going on with me, like cancer wise, but you know, I don't know why I felt her presence, but I just felt like a commonality when you were talking talking about the closeness. I grieved her. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, it's hard to explain to people because I just felt this deep connection to her. Yeah. And when she passed, and it's like, I was never her best friend. Like, I mean, she was friends with some of my closer friends, and it was in this other group of friends that I knew her, and I knew she's beautiful on the inside and out, just like such beautiful energy. And, but we just had never been super close, like in the same, that same kind of immediate circle. But then I just felt like she was, I don't know, just looking out for me, and I felt a strong connection to her. So then the whole the cancer diagnosis for me is when it just rock bottom. Yeah. Everything that I've been trying to hide from and like not acknowledge in my life, like all these things needed to change. I was not living my life was not in alignment at all, and it was not good. And I just feel like it was like, okay, we're giving her signs, and she's not listening to her body. She's not listening. And then I just feel like the cancer diagnosis is like, okay, now you're going to listen, because I had to. And I was brought to my knees, like, yeah. And I had to have a surgery on my leg, and because at the time melanoma it doesn't respond to chemotherapy or radiation, but now I guess they're using immunotherapy with melanoma. But at the time it was only surgery that was the main treatment. And even in this short period of time, this was in probably, oh my gosh, I always forget the date. I think it was 2016. I can't remember. I'm terrible with dates. I should know this one. I'm sure it's 2016 that this happened. But then, so I had to get a huge piece out of my lower left leg, and had to have like a skin graft on my hip to cover that on my leg, like 100 staples. It was a very, I wasn't expecting it to look like that when I came out of surgery. And then they removed lymph nodes as well to see if it had gotten into my lymph nodes. And so I had to wait 10 days. And those 10 days were excruciating, because if the cancer was in my lymph nodes, it was a very poor prognosis at the time. Yeah. And I think they've made a lot of strides with melanoma, and even in the last like 5 years. But, so I was terrified. And that's when I was staying at my parents' house, because my husband had to go back to work after taking care of me for a week. And I needed support, people to help me, because I wasn't really walking and doing stuff. And I just sat in my parents' like lazy boy chair, and I was just filled with anxiety. And that's when I had mentioned to you, my mom was into tapping. Yeah. She asked me if I wanted to do this EFT tapping, and I turned her down in the past because I thought it was a little bit out there. Like, I wasn't into any of this spiritual stuff, wasn't open to it, but I was desperate. So I went into her room and we did this tapping sequence, and I literally felt a difference in my body with the anxiety. And so I got very into tapping, and then that opened the doors to meditation and mindfulness. And then from there, it's just like my mind opened up to the possibilities, because before I was just like so narrow-minded. I didn't believe in a lot of things. And because I saw the benefits, and I could feel the impact of these modalities that were non-conventional, they weren't conventional, that I opened myself up. And then I was having issues with swelling in my leg, because I had lymph nodes removed, and that's common. People can develop like lymphedema. And I do still have like some existing swelling, but I was in a lot of pain with my leg, and I was going to a therapist at the hospital for it, all these things, nothing helped. And then that's when I heard about Reiki, and I went to the appointment for Reiki for my leg. And then I realized I was being led there for my anxiety, because it just, I was like focusing on all these physical things, cancer, my surgery, my leg, the swelling. But it's like the universe is like, okay, well, we see how you operate. I'm spitting on the camera. Sorry. Okay. I'm spitting on my screen. For anybody who is watching this, I just spit all over the screen. Sorry about that.
We love impassioned spitting. It's okay. Yeah. Conviction.
Yeah, conviction. Actually, I went to a speech therapist when I was younger, because I would spit when I said S's. So, something I've had to work on. Anyway, I don't even know what I was talking. Oh yeah, the Reiki. But the universe was like, okay, we see how this is going. She's not going to do anything about her mental health here. She's focused on her physical. The only thing that she's thinking about here is her physical. So we'll get her to Reiki for her physical. And once I got there, it was just life-changing, the realizations and healing I've had through just connecting with Reiki, the energy.
What a perfect segue. Thanks for sharing all that story with us. Because the next question was, what's your favorite or mind-blowing experience you've had with energy healing? And there's so many, right? It's like, how do I just narrow down one? But is there something that was just like, I mean, it sounds like you felt the effects of Reiki right away, which I think sometimes like the first things are like kind of mind-blowing, right? Like that get us on that path in the first place. So you were seeing the mental health kind of side effects, or what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, but you know what I mean? You were seeing it, the effects on your mental health. I think it's so important that you talked about that too, because I think that just so many of us are just, and societally, like we're focused on the physical. Like we break our leg, we'll go to the doctor, right? Because we can't go around with a broken leg. But like nobody thinks about how anxiety or depression or, you know, other mental health things are affecting them and affecting them physically. That's something that I'm just kind of, I know it, but like you, I think there's a layer of like, I just want maybe to avoid something back there. But like for me, I was diagnosed in 2017 with Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disorder that's attacking my thyroid. So I have a whole slew of things going on with me. You know, my vision's been affected, things with my liver, my blood pressure. I have swelling. My face is always really swollen. And I'm starting to it's starting to affect me really physically now. I've been suffering with it mentally, you know, or like with chronic fatigue for years. But now that something's happening in the physical, it's like, okay, I better do something about that. I think that's just human nature. But I'm just seeing like the mind-body connection with things like with autoimmune conditions and you know, mental health and like stress and overwhelm and all that kind of, it's crazy.
There's such a connection. And
there's such a connection.
And it's so exactly what you said. I feel like a lot of us will take care of the physical first, and it's like some of the mental health issues and things, it's just we want to try to sweep those. In my experience, let's just not deal with those right now. Let's deal with like I'll deal with cancer. That's a crisis situation. Yeah. And it's like, okay, you know, not realizing for me, the thing that was like the biggest problem for me was my anxiety and inability to regulate stress and lack of healthy coping skills. And through my rock bottom with my cancer, that opened me up and made me realize, okay, I don't have a lot of I exercise, you know, for stress relief, or drink a glass of wine for stress relief. Right. I couldn't run because I just had surgery. So, you know, my coping techniques were taken away, and I was like, okay, I need more. I need to focus on this more. And so Reiki, for me, Reiki has been like the most important tool in my mental health toolbox. And it's led me to just so much growth and understanding of myself. And I guess to your question about what's the most mind-blowing, like there's been so many mind-blowing things, but like what I'm thinking about now personally is when I went through for me, Reiki sessions were amazingly healing, but for me, I experienced the most healing during my Reiki trainings, like personal healing. And that's why I've taken every training possible for Holy Fire, because it's like where I learn the most about myself and I feel like I peel back the most layers is through these attunements and experiences. I've just done so much personal healing, and it's just shown me so much. And in one of my trainings, I was brought back to when I was conceived. I saw everything play out in front of my eyes, and my parents were so, you know, happy and felt so much love for me. And then I could then feel the grief. They had all this grief, and my parents, before I was born, my parents had lost a child to SIDS, and he was 3 months old when he passed. And my parents got pregnant with me very soon after he passed. And so I had never even thought about the impacts of this. And then I literally saw myself being born and saw the love that my parents had, but also saw the grief that they carried and how that grief impacted me in my childhood. And so things like that, I wasn't consciously aware of. And I don't know that I would have ever made that connection on my own, like to that level. And so Reiki, because it's spiritually guided energy, it's helped me to heal. Like it's shown me things that I don't think I ever would have known otherwise, and helped guide me along the healing path. So that's crazy. And another thing is, I just had a session today, and I've talked to this mother before, and she always says that I can share, I'm not using names, but I can share her son's story. But I work with a 3.5-year-old boy who is on the autism spectrum, and the mind-blowing things that have come through about people who with like ASD, like their purpose in the world and holding this higher vibration as we transition into the new paradigm, into 5D, that they are they're holding this higher vibration. And for him to actually had a reading with him this morning, like I do Akashic Reiki, so I do a healing, but also I shouldn't say his session wasn't Akashic Reiki because you have to be 18 years or older. All of my sessions are Akashic Reiki if you're 18 years or older, but for children, I get intuitive guidance, but I don't open the records.
Right.
And so for him, it was all about how he's like an alchemist. He like transmutes all of this negative energy, and he's been having all these problems. He's sleeping. He's been so tired lately, and I'm just seeing like the collective energies are affecting him so much right now. And also there's some personal things that within their family that were affecting him. But I don't know, just stuff like that I've been learning about autism and like the purpose of these children, which is so beautiful and amazing. I look at these children with awe, what they're doing of holding this higher frequency for the planet. It's unbelievable. Anyway,
I don't know if you know, but I have a child on the autism spectrum.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I do. My oldest.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, but I intuitively have felt that about them as well, that people on the autism spectrum are coming there because people are like, why is this happening more and more and more and more? Why are there more children with ASD?
Right.
I think there's something energetically. Like, I think they're just a new kind of soul. Yeah, I really do.
I have where's my book? I'm looking at my bookshelf. I don't think it's down here. I'll have to find it, but it's about all the different, you know how you were talking about before we started recording, you were talking about indigo children.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, is he a crystal? Maybe it's crystal children. There's, the rainbow children, indigo children. Maybe it's crystal. I need to go find the book, but I believe that I'll find the book if you want to put it in your, I don't know if
we can
anybody
put it
be
in the show
interested
notes.
and put it in the show notes, because it really explains these different, these children who are incarnating for these great purposes. And I see like this client that I work with, he has this, like I have goosebumps, like this greater purpose. And it's just this, and it's almost, I feel like, I look at these children, I'm like, they've made such a sacrifice for the collective to be here. And it's like, they're just doing this work, holding this higher vibration so that we can transition into this new earth. And it's just beautiful and amazing. And for me, it's been mind-blowing, the information during the Reiki sessions for this child. And I have to clear him. He gets all these attachments, and I don't know if this is with all children with ASD, but with him particularly, he is a sponge for attachments and like intrusions. And so I'm clearing him. He just picks it all up, and he just needs to be cleared a lot. And so another thing that was coming through is that he's going to benefit from being attuned to Reiki. So
I was just going to say that.
Really?
He should be attuned to Reiki when he gets older, so he can.
Well, we're going to do it soon. Like I'm getting the guidance, and I said, I'm just going to do it for her. I've never done this before, so I'm going to touch base with people at the International Center for Reiki Training. That's where I train. I'm a member, and that's where my trainings are. Like I'm based through the ICRT. And so I want to see what, I know children as young as like 2 years old have been attuned to Reiki. I just don't know if there's anything I need to be aware of. But like what I heard is like for him, he needs to take this, this is going to give him more. This is so interesting. This is what came through. And I was talking to her this morning, and she's like always like, you can share everything. She feels like sharing is helping create more awareness
I do too.
Within the community. And so what I heard is for people with autism, I don't know if it's just him, or I believe it might be for the whole community, is that for him is energetic literacy is the most important thing. Like in this 3D world we're living in, we focus on literacy, reading and writing, and think about, you need to read and write to communicate and navigate this world. That's an important skill. I heard with ASD, energetic literacy is the most important thing. So because they're living, I heard they're already living in the fifth, like he's already living in the fifth dimension. And so he needs to be able to navigate all these energies. And so being attuned to Reiki is going to give him back control and allow him to, just be energetically literate. It's just, to me, this stuff is fascinating because it's crazy the stuff that's been coming through. And it's just so special.
That's
these children.
Really amazing. Yeah. It reminds me, like, I know ASD, like, because I have a child on the spectrum ASD, but then I also have a child that has ADHD, and sometimes there's overlapping, characteristics of that, and it reminds me of what we were saying earlier. Both of us kind of self-identifying with ADHD and kind of joking, attention dialed into the higher dimension, but maybe we all are, right? Like, we are here to. Maybe that makes us perfect.
Neurodivergence of the world, rejoice.
Right? Well, because I think a lot of us felt like, we've never felt like we fit in, but we're not supposed to, you know? Yeah, we're not supposed to. So that's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. So let's end with what are you? I just saw something flash across my screen. I don't know if you just saw that. I was looking down and it was okay. I'll have to see if it shows up in the when I
actually saw it. Maybe I thought you meant do you mean you feel like maybe a spirit type thing?
Like something light or something just went across. So I was looking at my questions that I had prepared for you, but in the corner of my eye I saw something kind of run across the side. So normally I've shared a lot on this podcast and on Soul Rising that there's a lot of spiritual activity here. So every time I record, people are like, oh my God, there's orbs everywhere. It's because I only connect to spirit here in this office. Like nowhere else do I connect to spirit. So I feel like I've created almost like a portal in some way where there's a lot of energy. But I got to replay it. You guys on YouTube, when you're watching, let us know if you can see it.
Yeah,
something just went across. I saw it over here. I saw it go like that and come over here. Usually Erin, my co-host on Soul Rising, she'll see something coming down the stairs, or she'll feel like something's coming down the stairs.
I think I saw that. When you first asked the question, I thought you meant did something like a notification come on the screen?
No.
Didn't, but I think I saw
something,
a light. Yeah. For some reason, I feel like it looked red to me, but I don't know. Anyway.
Interesting. So what are you up to?
I could be wrong.
No. We'll watch it back. What are you up to now? What are your future plans? I know you talked about you're semi-retired and maybe all of that isn't quite worked out just yet. But in terms of your spiritual practice and in your business, what are some things that you're working on, or even some goals or future stuff you're thinking of?
Well, right now I'm working on an ICRT Animal Reiki level 1 and 2 course. So I'm working on creating the content for that course, because I really want to share that energy with people, because the frequency from this, it's not just for people who want to work with animals. It's very healing frequency for empaths. I identify as an empath. I found it so healing, and it's actually a really beautiful frequency, an abundant frequency. So a lot of people who take this course and are attuned to the energy notice that any things with scarcity mindset, abundance starts to flow to them more freely, which is amazing. So I'm working on those 2 courses, and as well, because I'm always I can't just sometimes focus on one thing. I'm also working on a Master Reiki training course as well, and I'm not sure when I will be delivering them. Hopefully delivering both within, moving into the summer, I guess, or maybe a little bit sooner. Who really knows? And also working on, I've been certified in breathwork and meditation, and I love those modalities. And I've had people reach out to me wanting to know more about breathwork. So thinking of doing and I've taught a lot in my students in the past. I've done a lot of work with breathwork and meditation in the classroom. So I'm working on doing an introduction to breathwork class training online, as well as breathwork for intuition, which I've learned different breathwork practices that help you connect with your intuition. So so those are right now what I have on the docket, and I don't know about whether I'm going back to. I'm just on you can take a leave for 2 years and go back to your same school. So I don't really know. I haven't been back. I do miss the students, but a lot. I love teenagers. I love their energy, but I'm loving what I'm doing. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
It'd be quite a change because like you as being a self-identified empath, I am as well. You know, working in an environment where there's all that energy and all those people to working alone. Like you're probably home alone all day, right? Yeah. Like how do you find that?
I've found it very, very good. That was my issue with the school is that I love like the energy of teenagers, but at the same time, I had to really up my energetic protection. And that's where the Reiki came in for me, is that I learned about energetic hygiene, energetic protection, because I literally would do an energetic practice driving in every day to school, and that helped a lot. But now just being in my own space, I just find has been amazing. Like I do miss aspects of school for sure, but for my own personal health as an empath, I think, and my energy, it's been pretty amazing to just have this space.
I find like as an empath myself, like I do like to be around people. Like sometimes that gives me energy. It depends on who the people are. I've learned that about that. I've learned that energy isn't personal, it just is. Some people you're going to feel really great around, some people you might not. But I tend to like, because I do work from home and I'm alone a lot, I tend to find myself sometimes like self-isolating. So I have to, it's like a fine balance for me. It's like, I have to go out and like just walk around the mall or something. Like I have to be around people because I haven't seen anybody, you know, other than my family for the last like week, right? Like I can find myself self-isolating.
I do. But that's
also
too.
A barometer for me. Yeah, it's a barometer for me too. Like I've noticed, we've talked about coping mechanisms a lot, and like one of my and like not so great coping mechanisms that I'm now aware of is that I tend to self-isolate when I'm going through anything. So people will notice, they'll be like, Amy, I haven't seen you on your stories in a week. Like you're not posting anything. What's going on? And I'm like, oh, I'm processing. Like that's just what I do. But I'm also learning that sometimes that can be to my death. Like it's not always good. So I'm trying to find a balance with that. It's funny because me learning more about astrology. We talked about that a little bit yesterday in the DMs because you're like, I don't know anything about my astrology.
I don't.
Like you should, like I should figure out, like you should give me your stuff because I'll figure out what your North Node is, because learning that my North Node is Virgo. Your North Node is like where what kind of your higher path. It's like your true north. It's where you're meant to go, right? So for me, having a North Node in Virgo, you might too, because it's generational, and I think we're born within like 6 months of each other, so you might have the same. It's like like your North Node sign is opposite to your South Node. This might be getting a little bit too technical, but just if you can think of like your North Node is where you're going, South Node is where you've been. So the opposite of Virgo is Pisces, right? So for me, past life mastery has been with those Pisces characteristics of going within, of finding my center, of being in that mystical, intuitive, spiritual world. So I've got those skills, which might be why I feel I suit this work and that it comes naturally. But then to think about, okay, but that can lend itself to, if I stay there, there's no growth. So like, how do I take those skills and use them in a Virgo way? And so I had an astrology reading done, and they're like, you're actually doing like, it's perfect. You're definitely listening to your spirit because you're taking your skills, those Pisces skills, and you're being of service, right? In that Virgo way. So it's like the perfect thing for you to be doing, and to putting yourself out there and to like, you know, adopting healthy coping stress mechanisms. And so sometimes, long story short, the reason I'm bringing that up is because I've realized through trial and error that sometimes I want to isolate, but sometimes the very thing I need to do is to put myself out there. And when I do, I process out loud. That's what this podcast has become. I process out loud, and then I'm like, whoa. And then there's the answer. There's the clarity. It doesn't always come from within for me. So it's interesting.
I love that. That's so interesting.
I bet you are.
I need to look into that because hearing all that, I'm like, okay, I need to get on the astrology train here because I'm very into human design and but I know I don't know anything about astrology. And for me, the podcast, because I'm a manifester and my strategy is to inform, I was like, okay, I need to start informing if I want to be in alignment. So a podcast is going to be, should be a good avenue for me to inform and be, come into alignment. So
there's so much like self-sovereign. Like I have I have 3 children. 2 of them are manifestors. The oldest and the youngest are manifestors. The middle's a projector. My husband and I are generators. So it's a whole lot of interesting stuff happening here. But the manifestors, like I see that in them of like needing to like be sovereign, like I make this decision. So I've just learned to like give them choice so that they feel like they're making it.
Don't want to be told what to do.
Right. I'm okay with either of these, but like I'm going to trick you into thinking you have a choice, whatever works. But yeah. I think learning your kids' human designs, I think, is really smart. Parents who are listening, maybe I'll link in the show notes how you can figure out human design for your children or yourself with the free link. Okay, Kate, it was wonderful to have you on. Thank you so much. You were so generous with your time and all the things that you shared and got vulnerable. And that's what we do here. We get vulnerable. So thank you so much. If anybody's interested in finding more about Kate, on Instagram, you're Oracle Lightworker, right?
Yep.
Right.
All her others. And
go ahead and share. I was just going to say her website and things like that I'll link in the show notes, but if there's anything else you want to share to end, the floor is yours.
And if I just thought of this, if anybody's interested, I don't know when this will air, but do you know when it's airing?
It's going to air in April.
So I do have I have an upcoming Reiki level 1 and 2 training March 18th, so this will probably won't have aired yet, but if anybody's interested in sessions or trainings, I'm always
future trainings.
Have future trainings coming up. So you can look, probably best places through Instagram or Oracle Lightworker healing@gmail.com is my email. But
amazing.
I like to hang out on Instagram the most.
Me too. I think that's my favorite as well. Yeah. I'm definitely going to check out the Reiki Master training with you. Maybe in the fall if you're offering something around that time. Because it will be a year. You have to wait a year between trainings, right? Is that right?
6 months.
Okay.
6 months, but I waited. You go with your intuition. I did end up waiting a year, but again, it's just go with your guidance. Maybe it's only 6 months.
Okay. Maybe you told me that, and so in my head, I held on to the year because I was thinking we're moving, right? We're moving back to the East Coast this summer. Once we're settled, we're moved in. The fall, kids are back to school. Maybe we'll connect then. I've had a few people, like I mentioned, a couple people that you and I were recording, and they're like, "Oh my God, when you be back here, you and Kate should do something in person." And I was like, I feel intuitively that we will. Maybe at some point. You never know.
Yeah, maybe.
Some sort of little retreat or something would be really cool.
That would be cool.
Really cool.
That's good for me to get me outside of my little. That's like what, now that I'm not teaching, I do self-isolate as well. And I'm like, I don't do any in-person sessions or anything, but it's good to be pushed outside and to connect. I feel like that's a message that's been coming through for me a lot, is the importance of community as we move into just like the energies coming up here is like, I keep hearing the message around community and connecting with people, and you can do that online, but I think there is something to be said about connecting in person too. So that would be cool.
It's funny you're saying that because I do everything virtually as well. And I'm like, this works for me. Like, I don't need to do anything else. But it's funny because I did a live. This is off topic, but this is how we roll. I did a live on Saturday, March 4th, because that was my 4th year in business. Like, that was my anniversary. And so I went live on Facebook and I did live readings. It's supposed to be for an hour, ended up being 2.5. And so many people messaged me and they were like, I know you're good, but you were really good. Do you think it's something to do with the energy of having all those people there celebrating you, and it like built the energy because it was just on fire, right? And I was like, maybe. And I said, I kind of intuitively feel spirit anyway saying, hey, like once you're moved and you're settled, it's time to do things, maybe not one-on-ones in person, but like doing an event, doing a retreat, being with a lot of people. And so you saying that kind of validates. I just got goosebumps as I said it. So I feel like spirit is like, yes, we're going to do something in person and build that energy. Very exciting. That. I love it too.
I love that.
Okay, so stay tuned for all of that. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.
No, thank you. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. See you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me for another episode here of the Intuitive Rising podcast. If you would like to continue the chats and join the community, please join us over on Facebook and search for the Intuitive Rising community. All are welcome. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider giving it a 5-star rating. If you'd like to connect with me directly, please visit my website at theintuitiverising.com.